There was once a girl who felt as though she stood at the edge of a vast and unfamiliar forest. Her name was Lila, and for as long as she could remember, she had been a seeker, a dreamer, with questions that filled her heart like wildflowers in spring. She had always believed she knew where she was going, her path marked by the signposts of childhood ambitions, the gentle nudges of her parents, and the bright encouragement of teachers who saw her potential. But as the years unfolded, and childhood faded into the delicate uncertainty of adolescence, Lila began to sense a growing disquiet within. The once clear path before her seemed to dissolve into shadows, and the compass she carried in her heart spun wildly, unable to point her true north. At first, Lila tried to ignore the feeling. She busied herself with tasks and distractions, filling her days with noise and movement, hoping that if she kept on walking, the path would somehow reappear. She compared herself to others, measuring her worth against their apparent certainty and success. Doubt crept in, whispering that perhaps she was lost for good, that the light she once carried had been extinguished by the weight of expectation and fear. But as the world outside grew more chaotic, Lila found herself drawn inward. On quiet evenings, when the sky blushed with the last colors of the sun, she would sit alone in her room, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, and listen to the soft rhythm of her breath. In those moments, a different kind of voice began to speak, a gentle, persistent whisper that urged her to look beyond the surface, to question not only where she was going, but who she truly was. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves drifted down from the trees and the air turned crisp, Lila wandered into a small bookshop tucked away on a side street she rarely visited. The smell of old paper and ink wrapped around her like a comforting shawl. Without thinking, she reached for a worn journal from the shelf. Its cover was simple, embossed with the image of a compass rose. Lila bought it on a whim, not yet realizing how it would become her companion on the journey ahead. That night, she opened the journal and began to write, not about where she should be, but about where she was. She wrote of her confusion, her fears, her small victories, and the moments that made her heart flutter with joy. She allowed herself to be honest, to let the ink flow freely without judgment or expectation. With each entry, she discovered a little more about the landscape of her own soul, the tangled forests and sunlit meadows, the rivers of hope and the mountains of doubt. As the weeks turned to months, Lila noticed subtle shifts within herself. She began to question the beliefs she had inherited, asking whether they truly belonged to her. She explored new interests, tried her hand at painting, joined a hiking club, and learned to play the guitar. Each new experience became a stepping stone, a way of mapping the world not as it was expected to be, but as she experienced it. But the journey was not always easy. There were days when the fog of uncertainty closed in, and Lila felt more lost than ever. She faced setbacks and disappointments, moments when she doubted her own worth and wondered if she would ever find her way. Yet with each stumble, she learned to be kinder to herself, to see mistakes not as failures, but as invitations to grow. One evening, after a long walk beneath the stars, Lila returned home and opened her journal. She read through the pages, marveling at how much she had changed. The girl who once clung desperately to certainty had become someone who embraced the unknown, who understood that the path to self-discovery was not a straight line but a winding road, full of detours and unexpected turns. Slowly, Lila realized that the compass she had been searching for was not something external. It was the quiet, persistent voice within, the inner guidance that had been there all along. She learned to trust her intuition, to listen to the subtle nudges that led her toward people and experiences that nourished her spirit. She found joy in the process of becoming, in the simple act of showing up for herself each day, no matter how uncertain the road ahead might seem. In time, Lila came to see that losing her path had been a necessary part of her journey. It was in the moments of uncertainty, in the spaces between who she was and who she was becoming, that she discovered her true strength. She learned that personal growth was not about reaching a final destination, but about embracing the continuous unfolding of her own story. Through her journey, Lila found that self-discovery was like tending a garden. It required patience, care, and the willingness to pull up old roots to make space for new growth. There would always be storms and setbacks, but beneath the surface, transformation was taking place. Each new day offered the chance to begin again, to plant seeds of hope and curiosity, and to nurture the dreams that whispered from the depths of her heart. As Lila continued to grow, she began to share her story with others. She spoke openly about her struggles and her triumphs, offering encouragement to those who felt lost along their own paths. She reminded them that it was okay to feel uncertain, that it was normal to question and to stumble. What mattered most was the willingness to keep moving forward, to trust in the process, and to honor the journey as it unfolded. In the end, Lila understood that the greatest gift she could give herself was the freedom to be a work in progress. She celebrated her imperfections, her evolving dreams, and the wisdom she gained with each new experience. She learned that true direction came not from outside expectations, but from the quiet confidence that grew within as she learned to trust herself. And so, as the sun rose on a new day, Lila walked forward with hope in her heart and gratitude for the journey. She knew now that the path of personal growth and self-discovery was not a destination to be reached, but a lifelong adventure, one that would lead her again and again back to the compass within. Thank you for watching this episode of Mind Awakening TV. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an awakening moment. Leave your thoughts in the comments and let's continue the conversation. Stay curious and keep expanding your mind.